Welcome to Marketing and Mindset. My name is Vanessa Cooper. I'm a Pinterest marketing expert and creator, and you are in the Marketing and Mindset room here in Clubhouse. We are going to be talking about ending negative self talk this morning. I am very, very excited about the conversation. I am actually going to be in the background while Connie is going to be sharing with you guys about this topic. I am so, so excited to have her here today talking. Connie's my Clubhouse bestie. She's here every week with me. And while we normally have a guest speaker sharing on different topics, some weeks me and Connie share about our expertise. So I'm going to let Connie take the lead talking about ending negative self-talk. I'm so excited to hear what she has to say. If you guys don't know Connie or you're not familiar with this room, you haven't been here before, I encourage you to take out a pen and paper, take some notes because she is amazing and you're going to love everything that she has to say. With that being said, Connie, I'm going to let you take over. I am Vanessa Cooper, and I'm done talking.
Hi, everyone. My name is Connie. I go by La Doc. I'm a Christian mindset stress coach. And I love days like this where we're able to talk mindset and work on ourselves so that, excuse me. I love days like this where we can talk about improving ourselves so we can in turn improve our business. And today we're talking a little bit about negative self-talk. But before I start, I want to give you the definition of stress. If you've been in the room with me before, you know that I say that stress is an emotional response to a situation. And because we respond with our emotions, we're always in stress. We're always have some sort or some level of stress, whether it's good or bad, whether you're an athlete preparing for a marathon or whether you're stressing out about a meeting, whether you're stressing about your Instagram and your Pinterest and it's not doing as well as you would like. We respond with our emotions. So at any given time, we are having some sort or some level of stress. But I want to talk a little bit about negative self-talk, because negative self-talk is a very harmful thing that we do to ourselves without actually knowing that we're doing it to ourselves. And I think that the first thing that you should know is what are some consequences of it. So basically, negative self-talk is an inner dialogue with yourself. It's how you speak to yourself, what you say to yourself. It limits your ability to believe in yourself. It limits your ability to believe in your own abilities. It limits yourself from reaching your potential. So when you think about it, negative self-talk is just you being your worst critic, and that's a saying that everyone knows or everyone has probably heard of before, that you are your worst critic. Well, at times, you being your worst critic can really jeopardize your future, both mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally. Because what's happening is that m- we experience us talking to ourselves all the time. When we're thinking, we're talking to ourselves. When we're reacting, we're talking to ourselves. When we have internal dialogue and say, I really am going to say this and I think I'm going to say that. Or when you think through a situation and you're playing all sides, so you kind of get prepared for whatever comes your way. That is inner dialogue. And inner dialogue is really helpful because it helps you understand or prepare for things that you're not sure of. And you should be doing inner dialogue and think about all the different things, like, do I post this and when do I post this and do I approach that client, and should I get on this platform, should I say that, should I change my branding, should I post every day, should I not? Those internal dialogues for your business or with yourself even are super healthy because it's your thought process. And thinking creates new trans paths in your brain that allow you to continue to use those cells that will eventually die out. Your brain cells die every day, and as you learn new things, as you have new conversations, as you expand your knowledge, you create new neural pathways. So although your cells are dying, you're creating new ones and you're continuously learning. So that inner critic that you have, that inner dialogue that you have, can be critical to yourself. It could sound like a critical parent, maybe your parent or your elder said something to you that kind of stuck with you, and that inner voice now sounds like that person. It could be a friend from the past, that either hurt you, said something to you, criticized you, and kind of just stuck with you because it hurt or it made an impact. Or it could simply be you following the path that has been set for you. For example, when I was growing up, my parents said no a lot, right? So now we look at parenting and it's like, hey, you really shouldn't say no to your child. You should say something different, because too many no's can create a certain level of instability or lack of belief in themselves, or even lack of wanting to try. So when we think about, what we were said in our childhood, sometimes we're just following the same path that was presented to us at the beginning, right? So when you think about negative self-talk, you got to think about all of those things, but there are a couple things that you can do to basically reflect, notice that you're doing self-talk, and then make some changes to how you speak to yourself. The first one I would say is you need to talk to yourself as if you're a friend, right? Would you call your friend stupid? Would you say, oh my God, you're such an idiot? Or would you say, oh, you're never going to make it, just don't even try? There are certain things that we would never tell our friends, because it's easier to uplift and support someone else than it is to uplift and support yourself. Why? Because we've never been taught that. Or potentially we haven't been taught that enough. Not that we haven't been taught, because I'm sure that our elders or our parents have told us before, like, you can do it, you can do it, but not in a context that has made such a giant impact that we know for sure we can do anything. We know it because we say it, like, I can do anything, but do you really know it? Do you really believe it? And so I say that I'm going to go back to like the consequences of it first, and then I'll give you some tips and tools. And then if you have any questions, we have the chat open. This room is for you to be able to ask any questions that you may have. If there's anything that you feel, nah, you know what, I don't believe in that, or, I think you're wrong, I would love that conversation. Negative self-talk is something that's fairly new, now that the world is trying to be woke and learn about things that we didn't really talk about before. Like, it was very taboo to talk about mental health, and what can we say to ourselves and what can we not. And now it's a very liberal space, which is awesome. And so I want to make sure that this room is liberal for you as well. So if you have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand. The mic is open. I'll bring you up here, or if you have questions, go ahead and put it on the chat. But let's think about some of the damaging ways that self-talk can affect us. One, it causes us an increase of mental health problems. Focusing on negative thoughts can decrease motivation. It can increase the feelings of helplessness. It's been linked to depression. It's linked to high levels of stress, and it can lead to a lower ability to see opportunities and a higher ability to see things that are detrimental. So what happens is that your heightened sense of stress, because you're talking to yourself negatively, then fogs your sight to only show you the negative, or the things that are going wrong, instead of seeing the bigger picture, the full picture. Other consequences: limited thinking. Obviously, you tell yourself you can't do something when really you can do anything you put your mind to it. Perfectionism. Negative self-talk requires somebody who negatively talks to themselves, creates this everything has to be perfect type mentality, when really that doesn't everything doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be great. Some things need to be okay. At times mediocre is just perfect, right? So perfectionism is something that comes from negative self-talk, but to an extreme, where you pick yourself apart and you start from scratch, or you stress yourself out because things are not perfect. Another thing that can lead to another consequences of negative self-talk is, like I mentioned, feeling of depression. Research has shown that negative self-talk can exacerbate the feelings of depression. So if you don't realize that you're talking to yourself negatively, if you don't realize that you're putting yourself down, if you don't notice that all you're saying are things that are detrimental or thoughts that are detrimental, then feelings of depression start to creep in, and that's something that you really need to keep in check. And then one of the last consequences is relationship challenges. Whether you're constantly criticizing yourself with your partner or your friends or your family, it gets to the fact where it gets to the point where it starts to bother the people around you. Like, why do you have to be so negative? And then it causes a lack of communication. Like, we can't even joke around you anymore. We don't want to be around you because you're not positive, you're always negative, you're always bringing people down. And so those consequences are some of the things you need to think about when we talk about self-talk. So how do we minimize it? How do we start to eliminate that negative self-talk in our life? The first thing is you have to be made aware. So you have to, within a day, let's just say, carry a notebook around you. And I tell my clients to do this all the time, is start writing down the things that you say to yourself that are not very positive or that you would never tell a friend, right? So for example, let's say I wake up in the morning and I have a bedhead. I look in the mirror, and instead of saying like, ah, thank God I have another day, or what a beautiful day today is, or whatever, I say, oh my God, you look horrendous. Well, that's negative self-talk. I just woke up. I'm not supposed to look like a superstar. I didn't get my makeup done during, while I was sleeping. I didn't get my hair done while I was sleeping. So obviously I just look like somebody who just woke up. That doesn't mean I look horrendous. So at that point in my notebook, I would say, upon waking up, I said I look horrendous, right? You have to catch yourself criticizing you. You have to learn to notice when you're being self-critical, because those things that you tell yourself have come from somewhere. And there's always people watching. So if you're a parent and you have little ones around you, whatever you say to yourself out loud, they're picking up cues. And because they don't know the difference between what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing, they're learning from you whatever it is that you're doing. So they will eventually mimic what you're saying. So if you wake up in the morning and you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, oh my God, I look horrendous. Eventually your littles are going to look at themselves in the mirror and say, oh my God, I look horrendous. And you're going to turn around and say, why would you say that? That's not true. Well, they can easily say, oh my God, but you do it every day, right? So the first thing to do is catch yourself saying it. Carry around a notebook, write down the negative things that you say to yourself, so that you can realize, oh my God, there's an issue or there's not an issue, or there are things that are hurtful that I would never tell my friend, or I would never tell my child, right? The second thing is you have to remember that your thoughts and feelings are not always real. And what do I mean by that? Um, your thoughts and feelings about yourself are never really 100% accurate. For example, I'm going to talk about fear, right? Fear in and of itself is not a true emotion, or it's not that it is a true emotion, but it's not based on reality. For example, and that's not all the time, it's just an example. Let's say I'm afraid of heights, right? If nothing has happened to me in the past that triggers fear of heights, maybe it's the idea that I'm really high up. Maybe it's the idea that I will lose my balance and get dizzy and fall. Maybe it's the idea or the feeling of nausea for being so high. My emotion or my fear of heights is not based on a reality, because I've never gone anywhere where I've been really high up. I've never fallen from somewhere where I've been really high up. I've never slipped when I've been somewhere really high up. So when I go ahead and encounter my fear, and I go into a building and I stand next to a window, 100 floors up, I may be nervous up until the moment I get to the window and I look and I say, oh my goodness, there's nothing to be afraid of. And here I am saying I'm afraid of heights, right? That's my example, because that did happen to me. So for me, that instance of that fear was based on a false reality. I really wasn't afraid of the heights. I was afraid of what I was going to feel when I was there that may or may not validate that I am afraid of heights, right? So when you think negative things about yourself, it may feel real, but it may not be real at all. I'll give you another example. Feeling not good enough. Let's say, I'm going to use myself as an example. Let's say I'm not a good enough mom, right? I'm a failure mom. When I have that feeling, I need to recognize it. I need to write it down that I'm feeling like a failure. And then I need to look around and see, am I really a failure? And I'm not, because I have a job that brings money in. I have food on the table. My child is healthy. My child is in a school. My child has clean uniforms to wear. She has food to eat in her lunchbox. She has dinner on the table when she gets home from school. She's in dance. We can afford her dance classes. If she wants to get a boba tea after school, I can afford a boba tea after school. I help her with her homework. um she knows how to read. uh she can take care of herself, she can have conversations. So the feeling that I have of being a failure mom is based on a false reality. So when you have that negative self-talk, those negative things you say about yourself may not always be true. Those feelings may not be reality. They're based on something that's false. So when I have that thought and I write it down on my notebook, I think, okay, is this real or is this not? Let me write down everything that agrees with that feeling, and let me write down everything that disagrees with that feeling. And on paper, you'll see that your thoughts and feelings are not always the reality. Because I'm not a failure mom, because my daughter's doing great and she loves me, and her friends love me, and my husband loves me, and she's on a good track, she's a good kid, so I'm not failing at that. I may feel i may feel that feeling because I feel that one thing that I thought was important, but that doesn't make me a failure. So the first one is catch yourself, write down in a notebook when you're saying negative things. The second thing is to remember that your feelings aren't always real. And so when you do write things down in that notebook that you say to yourself that are negative, write down the pros and cons. What things are true in your life that agree with that emotion or that feeling or that thought, and what things are true in life that disagree with that, and check out your list. For the most part, there will be more proof that you're wrong, that that feeling is wrong, than proof that that feeling is correct. And obviously, be honest with yourself, because just like you can skew people's thoughts by saying this or that, you can also skew your thoughts by writing more on one side of the list than the other. So you have to be honest and humble about the truth in your life that will support or deny the claims that you're saying that you are. So make sure you write down and you realize what you're saying. Second, your feelings are not always real, so take inventory of what's around you, proof against or for whatever it is that you're feeling. The second one is which I think is funny, is give your inner voice a name. Give your inner voice a name, because when you have inner dialogue and when you have conversations in your head with yourself, you don't you may or may not say your name. You may say, "Oh my God, Connie, like snap out of it. You know better," right? If you give your inner critic or your inner voice a nickname, it takes away the power that that voice has, because that's not you. That's a voice that was created by your surroundings, by the things people have told you, by the things your parent or your elders have told you, by the things that your teachers have told you. So when you find yourself in that negative situation and you hear yourself talking those negative things, you can tell yourself to stop. But you're not going to tell Connie to stop. You're going to tell whoever, Lisa, "Oh my God, Lisa, you're so full of it. Get out of my head." Right? Because those thoughts and feelings are not always reality, which means that that inner voice is not always telling you the truth. It may be lying to you. So when you think of it, it forces you to come out of that conversation and give it a goofy name and realize that you don't have to agree with what your inner voice is saying, and it's okay to not agree. It may sound crazy or cuckoo, but it's not. because those inner voices were built based on the different experiences and the different things you've heard from the moment you were born to today. And so all your brain is doing is piecing together all of those things and creating a persona. And that persona deserves a voice, and it also deserves to be told to be quiet when it's not telling you the truth. Then you also want to make sure that you limit your negative self talk. Limiting your negative self-talk is useful, or can be done by having conversation with yourself. So have conversation with yourself. Change the words that you use. Now what I use in the morning, instead of saying, oh my God, I look like a mess, I'll go, oh my God, I have the biggest bed hair, or whatever. And that to me is more positive than saying I look like a mess. Because if the first words that I tell myself is I look like a mess, I'm setting myself up for failure for the day. But if I say to myself, oh my goodness, look at your bedhead hair, this is crazy, it seems more comedic, it seems more light, and it's the reality. You've been sleeping in your bed all day, so your hair is not going to be perfect. So it's a comedic way of saying, you know, we need to do something with this hair, right? Um, so you're going to change the way you speak to yourself from negative to neutral or to funny, right? So if you say, let's say, for example, you're trying to lose weight, or you're trying to get fit, or you're trying to get healthy. When you eat something you're not supposed to eat, or you feel guilty for eating something that you feel you shouldn't eat, then instead of criticizing yourself or putting yourself down for making that decision, just say, you know what? My body needed it, and it's okay. I gave into a craving, and I'm going to continue to be good, right? Um a lot of times, it's very difficult to move from negative self-talk to something a little more neutral. So instead of saying, I hate this, say, I don't really like it, or I don't agree, or this is not a good thing for me. Something as simple as just get the word hate out of your vocabulary. The word hate is a very strong word. Some cultures believe that that word is really, really bad. Some cultures use it willy nilly. But mentally, the word hate is a strong word. So, oh my God, I hate that, is such a negative connotation. But if you say, you know what, I don't really like that, or I don't agree with that, or I would not make that choice, it's a lot softer, it's a lot more neutral, and it changes your thought process from negative to more neutral tone. So, looking at how you say, even if you say, I really prefer to do it a different way. Let's say you hate mushrooms, for example. I used to hate mushrooms. I don't really much like mushrooms, but if you put it on my plate, I'll eat it. Or you can say, instead of saying I hate mushrooms, you can say I don't prefer to eat mushrooms, but if it's on the plate, I'm good. I'll have a bite, right? So you're opening yourself up for additional conversation, even though that was a simple example, but you're opening yourself up to additional conversation. You're opening yourself up by not closing the door. Saying I hate something is a closed door. But if you say I don't like, or I prefer, or I'd rather, then that gives you more space to continue to have conversation, not only in your head, but with other people, right? So changing your negative to neutral, and then shift your perspective, right? If you think of yourself as your friend, would you say all those nasty things to your friend and still expect your friend to stick around? Probably not, right? If you're very negative with a friend and you put them down all the time and you criticize them all the time, they're not going to want to stick around. Unfortunately, our mind is stuck in our body. So it's not like we have a choice and we can cut them off right away. But if we change our perspective, looking at things in a different light, long term, it's going to help you create the thought process that you need, that becomes a lot more positive and a lot more effective for you than it does become detrimental, right? So when you think of yourself like a friend, and you shift your perspective and how you speak to yourself, then in the long run, it becomes easier to no longer do this negative self talk. Will it go away 100%? Never. Will it eventually stop? Never. Negative self-talk will always be there because you're always going to criticize either what you do or what you say or the friends that you're with or what you look like or how you thought about something or the decisions that you've made. You're always going to criticize. It's about how you're going to criticize. It's about how you're going to talk to yourself. It's about how you're going to support your decisions and help yourself move forward than it is than just either staying in the same place or putting yourself down. So I'm going to repeat the tips that you can do for negative self-talk. The first one is write down what negative self-thoughts you've had and then make a category on the left, things that agree with it, on the right, things that don't agree with it. And make sure when you take that inventory, you're being truthful to yourself. The only way that this will work is if you're true to yourself. No one's going to look at this data. No one's going to go into your notebook and say, haha, that's not true, or that's true, or you forgot this or you forgot that. No, it's self-work. It's improving yourself. So on that page on the left, what agrees with your negative thought and what doesn't agree with your negative thought, and actually weigh it out and see that you're not really telling yourself the truth, right? That your thoughts and feelings are not always reality. The third one is, if you're willing to, and I think you should, give your inner thought a nickname so that you can tell that nickname to get out of the conversation. Hey, this is an A and B conversation, so you can see yourself out of this conversation. That will allow you to then separate your negative thoughts from the things that are going to push you forward, that are going to be positive for you, and that are going to help you completely improve or move forward, and you'll be able to shut down that thought immediately. Then think about the things that you say that are negative and change it to something more neutral or something more positive. Now, you don't always have to go from negative to positive, but I think you should always try to go from negative to neutral, right? So instead of I hate, I prefer not to, I don't like, right? Then think about yourself as your friend. Because if you think about yourself as your friend, you wouldn't put up with putting yourself down all the time, because your friend would never do that. And you would never do that to your friend. And hopefully, your friend would never do that to you, right? So, if you have to carry around this inner thought process and this inner dialogue, you might as well carry around an inner dialogue that you enjoy, not an inner dialogue that you don't. So, shift your perspective. When you put things in perspective and you inventory your thoughts and your self talk, and you inventory your life and you show proof for or against those thoughts, you start to make a shift that eventually those negative self talk, you won't have to write it on a notebook because you'll automatically realize, oh, I did it again. You're wrong. That's not what I'm thinking. That's not what I believe. Don't lie to yourself. Here's the proof in the pudding that says that you're so much better than that. Let's say something a little bit more positive. It's about being mindful. It's about being present and recognizing what you're saying to yourself may be detrimental. It may not be physically harming, but it is mentally harming, right? So you want to replace it with something that's going to serve you a purpose, something that's going to serve you in the more positive light. And of course, you're going to rewind and repeat, right? Rinse and repeat all the time. Repeat it until you find yourself doing it less and less. Like I mentioned, will negative self-talk go away? Never. We are our biggest critic. We're going to eventually criticize ourselves. But if you practice these things, they will help you get into the habit of recognizing, reflecting, refocusing, and then creating a reality of positive self-talk that allows you to move yourself from the negative to the positive a lot quicker. Um, as I mentioned, the room is for you. So if you have any questions or if I'm talking too much, let me know. I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. Let me think. Um, yeah, shifting your perspectives, super important. Affirmations. Let's think about some affirmations that you can say that will help you with increasing your positive self-talk. So one, the most important one is I can do it, right? You can do anything you put your mind to. It may be a little difficult. It may take a little bit of work. It may take a little bit of practice, but you can do it. Who's to say you can't? Only you can tell yourself you can't. And if from the beginning you tell yourself you can't, forget it, don't even try, you're not going to do it. Right. So that's where negative self talk is really important. And where I say that the reality, your thoughts are not always your reality, because you may say, I'll use myself as an example again. I've never run. I've always had asthma. So going to school, elementary school, middle school, high school, I never really did PE because I was given a doctor's note that says if you run, you're gonna be out of breath and then you're gonna have to use your inhaler, right? So I was told all my life that I had exercise induced asthma, meaning your asthma gets really bad when you exercise. As an adult, I challenged that a little bit. And so I started going to the gym, and I realized, oh, yeah, running makes me cough, but I can do some strength training, right? So I learned about my body and I thought, oh, I can do it, right? I can do this. Come January of this year, a friend of mine said, hey, you should really run a half marathon. And my thought was, I've never run in my life. I have exercise induced asthma. I'm never going to be able to do that. And she said, you know what? I challenge you. You're an adult. You can really do anything you put your mind to it. So she's a good friend. She's talking to me positively, which is what I should have been doing to myself. And she said, if you really put your mind to it, you can do it. So I said, you know what? I'm going to hold you up on that offer. I'm going to do it. Right. So I changed my thought process from I'm never going to run a half marathon to I'm going to do it. What has happened from January to today? What's happened from January to today is that I can envision myself finishing. So I've changed my thought process to move from I'm never going to do that to I'm so proud of myself because I'm going to do it, because I can already envision it. I can already see myself crossing the finish line at a half marathon, running 13 miles without stopping or walking and jogging or whatever, but getting to the end of that race and actually doing it. If I would have continued with my negative self talk of I'm never going to do it, I wouldn't be in a place where I am today, where I can now run 10 miles without coughing, without losing my breath, without stopping, right? Because I'm working at it, because I know I can do it. So, the very first affirmation that you should use to increase your positive self talk is I can do it, because only you can limit yourself. Maybe there's a physical limitation or a physical barrier, but that doesn't mean that you lack trying. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't try, right? What about all of these individuals who are handicapped or disabled or missing limbs or whatnot? They're still going out there and running. They're still going out there and breaking world records. And you know no one can tell them that they can't do it, because they're going to do it, right? So the very first affirmation that I say that you need to use every day is I can do it. The second one is I love myself. I deserve love and I love you. Is an affirmation that you should say all the time. You should look at yourself in the mirror in the mornings and you should say I love you. What does that do for you? That that fills a void, because you're hearing yourself and you're looking at yourself tell yourself that you love yourself. And why is that important? That's important because at one point in time in our life, from when we were young to today, people have disappointed us. People have broken our hearts. People have shown us that they don't love us. People have shown us that we are unlovable. Well, you know what? We are lovable. Each one of us is lovable and each one of us deserves love. So the very first person that should tell you that you are loved is yourself. So looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I love you, honestly, will eventually get you moving, your emotions moving to where you absolutely believe it. When you absolutely believe it, then it's so much easier to say, I can do it, because you believe it. Because no one can tell me I can't do something. It's not about I can't do it, it's about get out of my way because I'm doing it, right? And so, for sure, I can do it. Secondly, I love you. And third, in line with that, is I deserve love. I do. I deserve love, and so do you. But you have to tell yourself that. I deserve love. There's a lot of there's a lot of negative things in the world already. There's a lot of disappointment in the world already. There's a lot of hate in the world already. But if you love yourself and you know that you deserve love, your brain is going to start looking for that perspective, and you're going to see that what you see in the world changes, because you're no longer going to be tied to your negative self talk that always looks for the negative. You're going to be tied to your positive self talk that always looks for the positive. So you will see and you will reflect and say, wow, I'm definitely not the person I was before, because instead of always looking at the negative, I, I now see the positive. Like, people will say, oh my goodness, you're always so positive. It's not about always being positive, it's that there's always a bright side. There's always someone that's worse out there than you are. So why do I look at the worst of myself when I can look at the best of myself? Right. Another thing is, I can succeed. I am successful. Just affirm it, because you are successful, because you are here, you are alive, you are breathing, you're in this clubhouse room, or you're listening to us on the podcast. You are worthy of love. You can do anything that you put your mind to it, and you are successful, because success is a lot of different things for a lot of different people. Your success is based on your definition, and the fact that you're standing here today breathing and listening, that's success in and of itself, right? So I can do it. I love you. I deserve love. I can succeed, and I am successful. If you use those 5 affirmations on a daily basis, looking at yourself in the mirror, you will see that your perspective of your self talk will completely change, and will start to change those around you as well, because the way you act is going to change, your behavior is going to change, your thought process is going to change, and it's going to be so much easier when you take inventory on writing down those negative things that you're saying, presenting your pros and cons to that negative thing, and then moving your thoughts from negative to neutral will become so much easier. And then at the end of the day, no one can come and tell you that you're not deserving of love, because you know the truth. The truth is that you deserve it. No one can come and say you can't do that. Okay, maybe you don't want me to do that, but that I can do it, I can. That I choose to do it, I will. Or that I choose not to do it, I won't. But you are no one to tell me I can't do that, because I can do anything that I put my mind to it. If I work hard, if I practice, if I do it every day, a lot of people say, well, you can't teach old dogs new tricks. That's a saying. Yes, you can. You definitely can. You got to practice and practice and practice and practice until that new trick is learned by that old dog. There's plenty of older individuals that are learning a new language. Who said that they can't learn it? If they really believed the lie that the world told them of old dogs can't learn new tricks, then they wouldn't even bother trying. But you know what? There's plenty of immigrants that move to new countries and have to learn a new language, and no one told them that they couldn't do it, right? They can do whatever they put their mind to it. So either they learn the new language in the new country, or they stumble and they fall because they can't learn the new language. But it's all in them. The power is in them that they can do it, that they do deserve to succeed, and that they do deserve love. So they're going to really try. Once you change your self-talk from negative to positive, or negative to neutral, because we're not perfect and we're never going to get to 100% positive, then you're going to see that things in life change. Um, so I presented to you consequences of negative self-talk, some tips and tools for you to put into play to recognize it and start changing and shifting your thought process and your self-talk. And I presented 5 affirmations for you to increase your positive self-talk. So I really hope that today's chat was useful to you. I hope you were able to take a lot of notes. If you have any questions going forward, you can always follow me here on Clubhouse or take the conversation over to Instagram. Vanessa, I know that you're in the background just listening and soaking up. Do you have any questions before I start to wind down the room and tell people where they can find me?
No, Connie, that was so excellent. It was such good advice. I'm guilty of having some negative self-talk, even just jokingly, but it's still negative. So I appreciated this conversation. It was awesome. I loved hearing everything that you had to say. Thank you so much, Connie. It was awesome. That's really all I had to say. I'm done talking.
Thank you, Vanessa. I really appreciate it. So, for those of you in this room, Vanessa, my clubhouse bestie, and I are on here, social media marketing trends room. We always talk about marketing and mindset. It just so happens that today we're talking about mindset and ending negative self talk. So, I want to reintroduce myself, let you know how you can find me, and I hope that we'll see you around next time. My name is Connie. I go by La Doc. I'm a Christian mindset stress coach. I talk about stress, how it affects our body, what are some things that we can start to change in the way that we approach ourselves internally, mentally, emotionally, physically, and push you to living stress by stressing less and living more. So I hope you really enjoyed today's talk about ending negative self-talk, and I hope that you'll be able to see us around. We do this room on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or you can follow on our podcast on Apple and Spotify. And if you have any questions, go ahead and follow us here on Clubhouse. If you're listening to us, you can go on to our Instagram. My Instagram is CLT La Doc. On Instagram, continue the conversation there. Feel free to ask any questions, and I hope to see you around next time. We'll be closing the room in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Have a great day. Talk to yourself positively, and I hope you shine.